rapidly growing,
non-native tree species,
consuming,
alien tree species,
adapting,
exotic species.
they conquer.
Forest fire. Education is very important.
Invasive species.
Strong bark beetle attack.
Risk.
Alien or a non-native.
Resistance. Heat. Timber market. Ecosystem services. Recreational use. Pests.
Jeopardizing local economies.
Perception. Public. Biodiversity. Urban trees. Resilience. Future. Climate change. Global change.
And devastating entire ecosystems.
We are talking about Alp trees. That's an Interreg Alpine Space funded project.
Welcome to the 10th episode of our ALPTREES podcast series. It's Tuesday, 19th of October 2021, and today we will talk about the lessons learned in our 4 pilot actions that were conducted successfully by the ALPTREES partners, as there are Frédéric Berger from the Institute inrae, Grenoble, France.
Hello again.
Regine Hradetzky from the Municipality of Klagenfurt.
Hello.
Anja Bindewald from the Forest Research Institute Baden Würtemberg in Germany.
Hello, good morning everyone.
Giovanna Ulrici from the Municipality of Trento, Italy.
Hello.
Sonia Abluton from the Institute Lamoro, Turin, Italy.
Good morning everyone.
Aleksander Marinsek from the Slovenian Forestry Institute.
Hello, hi there.
So, Aleksander, in short, what is a pilot action?
Pilot actions are some kind of case studies and are crucial for demonstrating the transnational strategy for non-native trees in our area, our Alpine space area, and those are tools which provide technical information and data on non-native tree species management, as well as for changing the behavior and perception of citizens in the Alpine space. So those pilot actions, which are involved in our project ALPTREES, emphasizing the integration of stakeholders from different sectors like urban green spaces management, forestry, nature conservation, public education, tree nurseries, scientific community, public services, tourism, and different things. So pilot actions are implemented in the local level and supports cooperation between public and private actors in order to implement inclusive governance processes in relation to the sustainable management of non-native tree species in the Alpine space.
So thank you, Aleksander, for this overview. So who among us will be the first to present his pilot actions? Maybe Fred?
Thanks for giving me the floor. So in France, we have defined 3 areas for the pilot actions. And in these 3 areas, we have specifically worked on the consequences of climate change on the forest-based solution for natural risks prevention. And in this context, and it was a real need from this 3 pilot action region, the question was, what will be the consequences of climate change on the forest-based solution for risks prevention, and mainly dealing with the non-native trees impact. So here they were big looking for information about what will be the spatially distribution of the non-native trees, if there is any shift within the tree composition in the current forest, and what will be the consequences in terms of rockfall mitigation or forest fire risk. And what was very nice is that we worked with the stakeholders of these 3 areas, and they were coming with a lot of, let's say, first ideas that by the end was not so right, let's say like that. And especially on the 3 species to be used for making new afforestation. And here with all colleagues from Vienna, with the maps that we have been able to provide about spatial distribution susceptibility maps, we showed to the stakeholders that by the end, for example, Douglas fir species are not so well adapted to both nature-based solutions against risk and also the use of the space in the future. And also what was quite interesting for us is that with all these maps, we show to the people that there is a shift in the use of the space by the forestry in the way that broadleaf trees are pushing coniferous ones up on the slope. And that was very important to show this because, for example, for rockfall protection, broadleaf trees are much better than coniferous ones. So it means that for us, the use of non-native trees, like, for example, black locust, the impact of climate change will go on the good way of having more protection offered by forestry cover. And that was brand new for these three territories. And now they are developing the new management plan in terms of land use planning, in terms of forestry planning, in the way that they will push on the use of this, let's say, non-native trees that are coming naturally in this area, like black locust, in order to improve these forest ecosystem services. So that was a great experience, and we will keep on working with them because now all the question is dealing with the monitoring of this area to be sure that the trends that we shown within the project, they will be very efficient in the future. So let's say that ALPTREES is not finished, and we will keep on the activity with all these stakeholders.
Thank you, Fred. Any questions for Fred?
Actually, I have one question for you, Fred. You said broadleaves are better than conifers for the adaptation to the climate changes. Can you be more specific? Which broadleaf species among non-native trees are best in your pilot area?
The best one are black locust, so Robina, because it's really, let's say, exploding everywhere in the space of this area, coming from the bottom part of these areas, which is the Isère River, and they are going up on the slopes. And what is very interesting with black locust is that the mechanical property, the ability of wasting energy when the rocks impact a black locust is much higher than all the other broadleaf trees. For example, the black locust is almost twice more resistant than quercus. So for us, it's very interesting. All the question now is dealing with what will be the structure of the stand of this black locust? Can we have a permanent efficiency? How to manage it? How to have a management close to the nature? How it will work? So here it's a lot of, let's say, in work of us, in front of us. And also we were very surprised, but Elanthus altissima, the heaven tree, is also not so bad in the way that this tree has the same mechanical property in resistance to a dynamic impact like Fagus sylvatica at the beach. So it's really interesting. It's very impressive because we were expecting less mechanical property than the native trees, but in fact, they could be better in this for this specific function. Now we have to cross with all the other function of this, let's say, new forestry space. What about biodiversity? What about invasiveness? What about timber production? Because, for example, for black locust, there is also a will to develop a specific sector dedicated to black locust for carpentry, for furniture, this kind of thing. So there is a real change in the perspective of the use of forestry area in the French Alps, and mainly dealing with non-native trees.
Regina has a question.
Frederick, I would like to know, Robina is known to be a pioneer plant, which needs very much light and settle on the edges of forests. So within competitive relations, Robina is very sensitive to shadow. So how will you manage these Robina woods in a long-term perspective?
That's a very good question. What can be seen in the field is that effectively Robina is coming from the riverbank of Isère because it's, let's say, agricultural area. So it's an open space. The conditions are very good for them in terms of light. And what we are just starting to see is that it's going up on the slopes. Even if there is not so big light, they are able to get in, let's say, a quite open forest. So all the question is dealing with the forestry management. Should we do more opening? But if we are making this, it means that we will put some gaps in the forest, and a gap is not so good in terms of rockfall risk protection. So now we are trying, it's the reason why I was talking about more close to the nature forestry management, in the way that we will try to define the size, the maximal size of the gaps, and to see if black locust will naturally come in these gaps. And also it's quite interesting because the forestry management with gaps, it's more open to the use of cable crane for extracting the timber. And it's quite important because we are on very steep slopes in this area. So there is a new paradigm, let's say like that. And the forest managers, they have to change their mind, they have to change their practice in the way to have more attention paid to these non-native trees, because they could be also from a good economical added income for them. It's always the problem with working with modeling activities. We have to, let's say, to check the reality of the trends. So let's see for the future.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Fred. Maybe, Regina, you want to talk about your pilot action?
The focus of our pilots were on urban forests. We had 3 pilot areas which were very different. This is a recreation forest, which is very intensively used by the people of Klagenfurt. Then there is a smaller one, about 3 acres. It's called Schachtelwald, and the very small one, which was originally abandoned corner, maybe, which grew out to a forest. Our focus was on the way how these urban forests might influence the microclimate within these constructed areas. And we found out that there is an effect. Even the small forests have an effect to the surrounding. And it can be said that this urban forest should be forced. Even small plots should be forced. And the tricky thing in urban areas about this topic is that we have very high prices. We have different interests. We have a lot of stakeholders. We have already established plannings, and interests. So to establish new forest plots might be a tricky thing. This should be a common idea of the whole stakeholder group, as well as it must be integrated in urban planning in a very early stage. Nowadays, in this urban area, we are restricted to very small plots, which might have been somehow forgotten, or which grow by themselves, which is stocked by spontaneous vegetation. And this is the reason why we have to deal with non-native trees in a very intensively, because this spontaneous vegetation in urban areas, due to establishment of Robina, due to the establishment also of ailanthus, and also other species which come from the decorative plants in the city, also the normal urban green from the streets and things like that. So this type of forests might be a bit different to usual forests, but they have also their services for people living around of these plots. And what we would like to find out, how big should these forest plots be to have an adequate effect? Based on the outcomes, it seemed to be about several hectares, so maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 hectares if it's possible. Then there might be an effect depending on the wind direction and the surrounding, up to several hundred meters. So I think this should be recognized in the urban government. Because of this very great number of stakeholders in urban government, there should be a process on good governance of developing those urban forests for the people and for establishing this ecosystem services even within the urban area.
I would ask Sonia to go on with your pilot action in Turin.
Okay, thank you. We are implementing our pilot action in the Susa Valley, a valley in the metropolitan city of Turin, Torino, Piemonte region, northwest of Italy. And more precisely, our pilot area is located in the territory of the Union of Mountain Municipalities called Susa Valley Mountain Union. In particular, our attention was focused on the Natura 2000 site called Monte Musinè and Casellette Lakes. And this site involves 4 small municipalities, the Mount Musinè, which is the closest mount to the city of Turin, the lakes of Casellette, and another lake called the Lake of Bolgarino. In the pilot action, we involved the local and regional stakeholders in order to share and evaluate the existing planning tools regarding the management on non-native tree species, supporting forest managers and private and public actors in decision-making and management processes. In this area, in the past, there has not been aerial management of non-native trees species, and thinning has often been carried out in order to increase the stability and the protective functionality of the pine forests. But other interventions which were carried out in the past were aimed at reducing the risk of fires, for example, while the issue, the problem of the invasiveness of some non-native tree species is a recent factor and was taken into consideration only after the establishment of the special area of conservation in 2017. And at the local level, we are working on 2 different levels of governance. On a larger level, we have involved the Union of Mountain Municipalities, 23 mountain municipalities with a total population of 67,000 inhabitants. And on a more restricted level, we are working on the site of community importance called Monte Musinè and Casellette Lakes. These 2 different levels of government sometimes overlap. And a first lesson learned is that permanent discussion between these different levels is necessary to make decision and intervention more homogeneous at the local level. We have different management tools in the pilot area. We have 2 forest management plans for the 2 main municipalities, the municipalities of Almese and Casellette. And these forest management plans are operational tools which are required by the regional legislation. We have another management tool, which is the management plan of the Natura 2000 site. And this plan sets other specific objectives with the aim of maintaining and improving the conservation conditions of the habitats and species. Another lesson we learned during the pilot action implementation is that private owners must also be involved. In fact, the management plans concern only public properties, municipal and state-owned, and do not concern private woods. And these private ownerships are characterized by very fragmented properties and small particles. And in our pilot action implementation, we are cooperating with the local forestry information point in order to provide some indications, some information to the private owners and to involve them in the management of the territory's forest resources. And another lesson we learned is that it's necessary to work at the local level for the integration between ecological and naturalistic data and the information related to forest management. We try to bring the topics of environmentalism and forest management as close as possible, because currently they are not always in tune with. We are implementing three main activities at the local level. First of all, an ecological survey, which was carried out in a territory occupied by both non-native tree species and native tree species. And in this research, we work on the use of fungi as a useful bioindicator. We carried out a survey about the natural regeneration of Pinus strobus, Pinus nigra, and Quercus rubra within the Natura 2000 site. And we are also working on a survey on the new possible uses of the wood of Quercus rubra in cooperation with some local stakeholders, and in particular in cooperation with turners, carvers, carpenters. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Sonia, for your presentation. Some questions for Sonia?
Yes, thank you, Sonia. Your pilot action look very nice, and it is exactly what we want to do in ALPTREES project. So, do you have any idea how many people you involved in this project?
Do you mean stakeholders, private and public stakeholders, for example?
Yes.
Yeah, we are working on two different levels. On the one hand, we are involving stakeholders. We will a study visit at the local level will take place, and we will involve more or less 20 public stakeholders. So I think that 20, 30 stakeholders at the local level will be involved. And then we are trying to involve also the public, the people. For example, we are working with the school on a citizen science activity, and we are trying also to involve citizens in order to know something about the management of non-native trees. So I think that we will involve more or less 30 local and regional stakeholders, and in the tree talk, for example, we will try to involve citizens and schools.
Thank you, Sonia.
Was there another question from Anya?
Thank you, Sonia. I have also one question. So, do you have any example for some management recommendations or specific measures how to deal with non-native tree species that pose risks maybe in some of these protected areas in these Natura 2000 habitat types, but on the same time perceived valuable, for example, from an economic point of view?
We don't have at the moment specific advices because we are working on them, because our pilot action is concluding. Next Friday, we will have an important meeting with our stakeholders. So we are trying to share with our stakeholders some advices, some recommendation. An important value, an important topic that we share with our stakeholder is that it's necessary to find the way to involve the private owners, because our territories are very fragmented, and public ownerships is just a part of the whole picture. We have to involve also the private, and we have to find the best way to involve them. Because with the interventions of the public ownership, we don't reach the final objective. We have to involve also the private properties. So this is one of the first recommendations, but we are working on them to provide other recommendations and other advices.
Thank you, Sonia.
Anya, do you want to go on with your pilot action?
Yes. So our pilot action took place in the city forest of Freiburg im Breisgau in southwest Germany. And so I should also mention that I did not do this case study. It was actually a master student. She collected the data for her master thesis. So what she did is that she interviewed forest visitors online of the city forest in Freiburg. And in the focus of this pilot action was the Douglas fir, so Pseudotsuga mancesii, because it is one of the main important non-native tree species in the city forest area. So it makes up about 13% of the city forest, and in some areas it's even more than 20%. It is an important tree species in our region here. So Douglas fir is considered a suitable alternative to Norway spruce under projected climate change. It's considered, or it's expected, that the importance of Douglas fir may even increase in our region here. Yeah, it was interesting to analyze also, to gain some knowledge on forest visitors' perception of the Douglas fir in the city forest, as this may also facilitate decision making in urban forest management. So the objective of this pilot action was to investigate how the Douglas fir is perceived by forest visitors. So for this online survey, abundant tree species of the city forest, including the Douglas fir, were presented individually on photos, and the participants were evaluating the trees on the photos with regard to their visual preference. And in addition, the participants during this online survey were also asked questions regarding the socioeconomic benefits and the environmental impacts, the positive and the negative ones, of the main tree species in the city forest of Freiburg, which is the Norway spruce, Douglas fir, of course, silver fir, European beech, and oak. One of the main results of the study is that Douglas fir, just based on these photos that were shown to the people, was preferred over Norway spruce, and also perceived as much more beautiful compared to the other conifer trees in the city forest. And also the participants highlighted that they really like the large and old Douglas firs growing in this region, because they have these strong trunk dimensions and they're growing like really high. And also the people highlighted that they really much like the forest areas in Freiburg, where you can find a lot of Douglas fir. What was also very interesting is that many of the people, even if they were not experts in the field of forestry, they recognize the Douglas fir and they know this tree species quite well. And also most of them know that Douglas fir is non-native actually to Europe. They still say that they perceive this tree species not as a foreign tree species in our region, because it was always there for them. And so for them, it's like a native tree in this region. What was also really interesting, that many people knew about the importance of Douglas fir to help adapt forests to climate change. But on the same time, many of the participants were also aware that Douglas fir may not provide sufficient habitats for native species. So in the overall conclusion, the surveyors highlighted that Douglas fir is important for the forest, but it should be only used in mixtures with native tree species. One of the lessons learned from this pilot action is that people know quite a lot about the forests they are visiting. What can be concluded also for the management of the urban forest is that the results indicate that the Douglas fir is beneficial for the aesthetic value of urban forests. So if it's used responsibly, so cultivated in mixtures, it can increase also the recreational value of city forests, not only in Freiburg, maybe also in other regions. Thank you.
Thank you, Anya. Some questions for Anya? Fred, please go on.
Yes, I have a question, because your study is very interesting, and I like this work on the perception of the grass fir. My question will be, because this is for urban forest, what about the transition between urban forest and, let's say, the forestry area? Because, for example, in France, afforestation done with Douglas fir, they are not so nicely perceived by the population, by the citizen, because it's too dark, it's one species, and there is quite, in terms of biodiversity, quite nothing growing under. So in urban forest, where you have, let's say, single trees, mixed with all the other one, it's very nice. So how to deal with this, and if there is any perception of risk of, let's say, regularization of the stands, or to have more Douglas fir, and by the end you will have to do something in this urban forest in order to remove some of the Douglas fir, because it could be, let's say, maybe monospecific species in this area. There is maybe a risk. And also the question that we have now in France, and according to the work of EERSA in Vienna, there is a nice suitability map up to 2050. But after, and if the climate change will keep on, both for, let's say, the two worst scenarios, then we will have a decrease in Douglas fir. So do you have the same perception in the way that, okay, we can play with Douglas fir now, but in 20 years or 30 years, maybe we'll have big problem, because it will be like for spruce, no more adapted to the new climate condition. Do you have the same feeling, perception, or the same, let's say, a warning from the citizen, or not?
So actually, we have also some suitability maps here for this region in terms of projected climate change. We have suitability maps showing the potential distribution of tree species for different climate change scenarios. What we can also see is that Douglas fir will shift up. So it will definitely, or according to these maps, it will change distribution also here in our region. And actually already now you find like the high proportion of Douglas fir you found more higher up in the mountain regions. So not so close to the city actually. So you have to walk up to find a lot of Douglas firs. And I could imagine that this shift may continue. And also the forest managers are already discussing which areas could be suitable. But as it always is with this future development, it's quite uncertain how it will develop. But people are aware of this, yes.
Yes, thanks a lot. And it shows the need of transnational cooperation about these questions.
One short question from Regine.
Anya, maybe you know from other landscape studies, people also love what they are used to. So I think this is also true for the Freiburger city forest. So do you know comparative studies in other landscapes with other tree types and tree species which have the same setup of your study, asking people, how do you like this tree or that tree?
Actually, I'm not aware of similar studies. I know that people were asked if they have a preference for a specific shape of a tree. And also, I know that there are studies showing that people prefer broadleaf tree species compared to conifer tree species. But okay. I'm not aware of any study examining one specific non-native tree species in terms of visual perception and knowledge.
Giovanna, can you tell us about your pilot action?
Trento is a small city surrounded by mountains. ALPTREES for us is a big opportunity to focus on climate change, on not active trees as a problem and also as an opportunity. We are the Park and Garden Office. We design, make and maintain urban public green areas and green roads. We know that our landscapes are changing, that trees are under stress. We have new tree disease, temperatures are increasing. Our main object in ALPTREES is to survey, enhance and stabilize the NNT, considering that 45% of urban species in public areas are NNT. And we do that not only for, but also with citizens. In ALPTREES, we focus on two pilot areas. The first is Gocciadoro Park, where we are facing NNT as invasive, so as a problem. The second area is Canova, where we are focusing on NNTs as an opportunity. Gocciadoro Park is a Nature 2000 protected area, but is also a very popular and crowded public park. The problem here is to preserve and improve the residual core of the mesophyll forest that now is in decline, and that is endangered by the spread of invasive Robina, ailanthus, bamboo, palms, also cedrus and douglasia and black pine that were planted in the past. We worked on a gocciadoro management and monitoring program, planning an active management of the forest for the next 4 years. An analysis of existing tree species and potential invasiveness was made. The present formation and the current dynamics have been analyzed. Rules and good practices to be applied to contain and to monitor alien tree species have been defined. Between the intervention, we define the containment of ailanthus and locust tree expansion, a progressive elimination of secondary replacement origin formation, a limitation of forest path, hedge management, interruption of raking and foliage collection activities. But between that, also we obtain an agreement for a reforestation program with a national NGO that offered us 2,000 seedlings of native trees, Carpinus, Acer, Sorbus, Quercus, to contrast the ailanthus and locust tree. But we made also workshop with the landscape architecture student of Trento University, and we made another precious agreement with the local elementary school. We realized for them an outdoor classrooms and the planting of ancient fruit trees. Canova is the second pilot area. It's in a suburb of Trento, poor of public green, but rich of critical social issues. The area is flat, empty, a wasteland lacking of identity. We start thinking to a contemporary common, building a group of action with local institutions, local associations, and some younger startup. The activity involved the cooperative design and planting of a new urban forest made by rings of not native trees, without infrastructure, able to host public activities. We looked for funding to buy plants and activate multiple micro-events. As related activities, we work with local newspaper and we use the municipality's press to spread the activities and information on pilots. We organize walks and outdoor lessons with the university and schools. We thematize the annual temporary flowerbed festival that we organize for downtown. And we prepare a treasure hunt on biodiversity for children. And we prepare also a local guide for the app iNaturalist that is used from all the partners in ALPTREES.
Thank you, Giovanna. Thanks to all of you for your presentations of the ALPTREES pilot actions. We will now start our last round of insights and outlooks concerning the ALPTREES pilot actions. Fred, do you want to share a last statement?
Let's say that the key word is participative action with the stakeholders, in the way that what are the needs of the stakeholder, what are their current knowledge. As we are working in a scientific research center, there is a first question of translation between, let's say, very practical question of management to scientific one, but with a kind of apply activity in order to give a feedback 2 or 3 years after. And the big challenge now is to keep on the supporting activity that research center can provide to specific area or stakeholders. The challenge was to develop a trust relationship, and it was very well working. So now we have to keep on, and everybody, let's say, as a part of the puzzle. So we have to share our parts and to be sure that what we are providing is well understood, and also what are the limits of what we have produced. For example, a lot of maps has been done with modeling tools. So there is always a part of uncertainty about the result. So how to deal with this, how to explain this. And we have to keep on this participative action, for example, with the use of e-naturalist, with the use of this kind of science participation tools. We have to promote them, and we have to be able also to answer to the question coming from these colleagues.
Thank you, Fred. Short statement from Regine.
Yes, thank you, Fred. And I can recommend the same. Working in urban plots and dealing chains is always a participative action and always a dealing with stakeholders. So I can appeal for good governance and even within a municipality to find a common idea and to develop a common way to develop certain processes. Thank you.
Thank you, Regine. Sonia, one last statement.
Yeah, I agree with Fred and Regine. Also for us, the challenge was and is to combine the research and the scientific level with the management level. So in order to provide recommendation, practical tips for stakeholders. And I think that this is the most important challenge in our pilot project implementation.
Thank you, Sonia. Anya from Freiburg, one last statement.
Yeah, for me, it was just nice to include the public into such a scientific study, because usually I'm only working with more science people. And so I pretty much like that this pilot action gave me the opportunity to involve also the opinion of the public, just forest visitors going to the forest and to get to know their opinion. This was really nice. Interesting.
Thank you, Anya. Giovanna, one last statement.
We realize that monitoring is crucial because we have to avoid errors in management of invasive tree. In a more large way, we realize that NNT is a topic full of misunderstanding. We realize also that some measures are not well accepted, especially when we work on invasive limitation of forest path, cutting of healthy trees. From our participative experience, we learned that the new challenge for us is to involve a private green owner, because we need a more large strategy on our territory, and we have to promote more and more the ecosystem service offered by NNT.
So, Aleksander, is there some last words you want to share on this?
I can see that we have a different wide spectrum of different pilot actions in our project, ALPTREES. Our pilot actions should serve as a playground where we can apply our ideas, see the direct results of our actions, and at the same time, we can present our work and ideas. We can involve a lot of different stakeholders to show them. It's a kind of show off what we are doing. It's not just words, those are actions.
Thank you, Aleksander, for those great words in the end. So this is the end of our podcast. Thank you for your time. Have a good day and goodbye to our audiences.
Bye.
Bye.
Ciao, ciao. Auf
Goodbye.
Wiedersehen.
Ciao.